this is what I come to the junket for. I love roundtables so much. This is the closest to what I do in real life, where you stand there with a bunch of people and swap stories.
Were you editing on Avid with
I
this
was,
one?
of course. Avid is my homeboy, as they say.
I was-
Without Avid, I probably wouldn't be half the filmmaker I am today. Most critics will be like, he's not even a real filmmaker. So imagine any talent I have is all due to the ability to kind of go through that footage, man, which I learned on Chasing Amy. I watched Scott Mosier was the one who learned Avid on that. And so he was going to edit Chasing Amy. I only knew how to cut on a Steenbeck. So I watched him for about 3 hours first day, and watching somebody use Avid is like watching somebody play video games. You instantly want to do it yourself. You're just like, do the, oh fucking give me that. And you start doing it. So I did that for a while, and by the end of the day I knew how to cut on Avid, and that was 1996.
And I know I was at NAB when you were speaking keynote, and then when you were doing the Avid presentations, and you had every guy in the place was like, we gotta get Avid, because you were so passionate.
It's the best system out there. I mean, especially like I used to have to, and it's not my fight, but you're fighting a bunch of people who are like, final cut, but after Final Cut 10, a lot of people were like this.
They dropped it.
They dropped it.
Hard.
And so a lot of people have gone to Adobe Premiere, it seems like,
Yeah.
but more people have picked up on Avid as well, because they've now got it where you can run that shit in a laptop.
I
I
loved
cut
it when it
TUSK
first
in my
came out.
toilet.
I can remember it was a bay, right?
A whole room.
A whole room
Yeah.
just for Avid. With
I
its
had
own
2
special
towers
keyboard
and its own keyboard, a big monitor, and 2 monitors
Yeah.
here. But now it's just like I could literally
It's all
carry
program.
around a laptop and a separate drive.
Is
Well,
that-
Justin said that he sort of douched up the character that he played a little more than he was originally conceived.
Justin was my co-pilot on this, particularly with his role. Like, I went into the Howard Howe role, being a big Michael Parks fan. Like, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to make the movie, because I was done and out and shit. I was like, what would make me sit in a real first world problem kind of way? I was like, what would bring me back to the movies if I had to go back? And I was like, I would love to watch Michael Parks just fucking act his ass off and shit. And I'd like to get him attention, but I didn't get him on Red State because I was too busy getting attention for myself, just creating a fucking story around it to sell the movie without selling marketing and stuff. So I was like, I love the Red State experience, but I always felt like he got kind of cheated, man. Like, he deserved more attention. So I was like, fuck, man, if I can shine a light on Parks, that would be a reason to go back and do it, and that would make me thrilled to do it. What was your original question?
Well, it was about Justin working with you.
So that part of Howard Howe was written within an inch of his life. Michael, breathed absolute life into it, and it's Michael's performance from first to last. But all those words, man, like, I spent time. I loved writing Howard Howe. And Wallace was just the guy that Howe spoke to and then turned him into a walrus. So he was more the how, why, you're kidding. And that was it. So in the original draft, in the original incarnation of the podcast, of the film, the podcast that he does in the film, Justin's character was more of a sex tourist. So basically, he would go fuck around with swingers around the world and then come back and tell his friend about it and shit. Same premise, but I don't think it was called Nazi Party at that point either. So Justin, and there's the scene where he's talking to Genesis and she's like, "Don't go to Canada," the one that's in the movie. Same exact scene, but the added sickness, poignancy of her going like, "Please don't go to Canada to fuck somebody for a podcast." And he's just like, "I got it, it's my job." And shit. So Justin was like, "Dude, they're going to want to see me in that rubber suit as quickly as possible. Like, please give me a human side so that they don't give a shit about me. I want them to care when they put me in the suit." And he's like, "I can't do that if the first scene they see me talking to my girlfriend, I'm like, no, I'm going to cheat on you for a podcast." He's like, "Every woman will want to see me in the suit." And that's when I was like, "Ooh, it's a date movie."
Yeah.
So right away I kind of went back in and said, "All right, well, what are we doing here?" And he was just like, "I don't know, I feel like we're so close about saying something about losing one's humanity." And I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty obvious." I was like, "All right, let's just tilt it this way, in this direction." So we had a conversation about the online world, where, basically you could blow up huge for something that you're not necessarily that proud of. He had just read an interview around that time about the Star Wars kid, who was just like, "I hated that. Every part of that fucking sucked for me." And you're like, "Wow, we all love that." And he didn't. So Justin was like, "What about those people that go after those people?" And I was like, "All right, so the podcast could be like, you go after people like there's a Kill Bill kid and blah, blah, blah." So Justin helped me shape what Wallace became. And Justin was my secret weapon, is why I reached out to him for the cast, because you don't just get a performer with Justin, you get a writer. You get somebody who writes on their feet, who does your movie, and then fucking does 6 other movies that blend into your movie because he's so fucking quick and charming. So I was like, look, I won't have any fear about people not giving a fuck about Wallace, because Justin's going to do what Justin does best. And then, on top of that, he's going to do what he's never done before, which is take the only fucking arrow out of his quiver that he knows he can hit the bullseye with every time, speaking. Like, he's charming as fuck, and that's what he does in movies, he charms. And in this movie, I think he was up for the fucking idea of, like, I'm gonna take that away and see if I can still do this job. I think both of us have just been doing this job long enough where we're like, I don't care anymore. Let's see what makes it different this time. And for him, it was like, I wonder if I can convey a performance without speaking, if I can act and connect with the audience without, with just going like, ugh, and shit like that. So boom, suddenly he was swimming along with it, and he improved the movie 100, 300%. I know it's not mathematically possible, but like, it was a Howard Howe movie, and thanks to Justin, you have two performances that sit side by side that bounce off each other wonderfully. You know, you don't sit there going like, yeah, Justin was okay. Justin goes incredible places, like we've seen him do things before that we've seen him do in this movie, and then we see him do a bunch of shit we've never seen him do before. That's why I'm so happy to see people patting him on the back, 'cause it was tough to say yes. You know, it's not a movie that people instantly go, oh yeah, fuck yeah. Because, you know, his agent told him what to do. His agent was like, dude, you're already the Apple guy. You really want to be the walrus as well. And so he vetoed. He was like, you know what, it scares me too, but like, I feel like that's the reason I should do it. And thank goodness. I mean, I'm so glad he did, because now people are like, holy fuck, Justin Long's a badass and shit like that. And while we were making the movie, he was so sweet at one point. He came up to me at the end. He was like, can't thank you enough for not paying attention to the list. And I was like, what, the Schindler's List? And he was like, no, man, the list of fucking hot names, the people that you work with and stuff. And I was like, I have that list, and you're at the fucking top of mine. You're a hot name, dude, because you make my job easier. Like, I know I'm gonna get fucking quality beyond what I'm looking for. You're gonna pick up any fucking slack and bring me shit where I'm like, I haven't thought of that, I'm gonna showcase that, and I'm gonna get credit for it. So I can't imagine making this movie without those two dudes. They were the whole movie. Even though on the podcast that originated it, I never said Justin Long and I never said Michael Parks. The moment I sat down at brass tacks, when it wasn't just a stoner conversation on a podcast and I actually put my fingers on the keyboard, it was Parks that drove it. I was like, I gotta do this, man. I wanna shine a light on Parks, and what better way to spend a month than watching that dude just say batshit crazy things. You know, take all the sex and the religion and politics out of Red State and just let him be fucking nuts and fucking recite things and be spooky and whatnot. He's so damn good at it. And he took it and ran with it. Like, he chewed the fucking scenery in the best possible way, but he gave that guy a heart and a soul and gravitas, man, that, like, probably on the page that he didn't have. So Parks, man, and Long together, I put them in any movie. They're already both in Yoga Hosers, and they're both being Moose Jaws. I'll work with that whole team for the rest of my life, because all of them were brave enough to be like, fuck it, let's do it. Like, we weren't throwing money around. This movie was under $3 million, so everyone's working at fucking scale rates and shit, and still gonna have this movie hang around them like herpes for the rest of their fucking lives. No matter what they do, people will be like, you were in that walrus movie, weren't you? You know, this is like denying Christ if you're a fucking Peter. They'll find you sooner or later. So, you know, for them to say yes, it wasn't a paying gig, wasn't necessarily very high profile. I always expected to play in one theater in New York and one in LA. It's like the podcast movie, and that would be that. But they dove in and brought a level of performance to the movie that the movie doesn't really necessarily deserve. But, oh, fuck, I love them so much. So I'll put them in everything from now until the day I die.
Well, Kevin, how important it is to get this budget for that, because you've done some great stuff. You also fight to get your projects done, and your audience and your fans like that.
It's really not a fight. I mean, this was shockingly easy. I think the timing was good. I was ready to pay for this myself. My wife loved the script so much. She never does that. Says that about shit I do. She don't like the Jane Silent Bob pictures. Thankfully, I never had the opportunity to pay for them while she was around. If my wife was around before I made Clerks, I probably wouldn't have made Clerks. She would be like, this is stupid, Kevin. But this movie, TUSK, like, I sent her the first 15 pages. I was working in my office, and I chatted to her. And I was like, read this. And she don't listen to the podcast, so she never heard us talk about the Walrus story or anything. And so she was, I thought, a great sounding board, a person who doesn't necessarily like what I do for a living, who I trust their taste and stuff. So I sent her the first 15 pages, and she was like, what the fuck is this? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm shaping it. It's kind of weird, right? She's like, I'm done reading my book. She had like 3 books she wanted to read, and she was like, I need something to read, keep writing. And I was like, I'm fucking done. That was just enough push that I needed. I was like, I'll go back and finish writing and stuff. So when I was finished, she fell in love with it. She saw every page of it as developed and shit. She was the one that was like, fuck around with time. She's like, in Red State, you fucked around with time a little bit. You could do that here, man. Move things around. I was like, oh my God, you're right. So, you know, she was a producer on the movie. But when push came to shove, like, I was like, I said, I don't know if anyone's going to ever pay for this movie, so I might want to pay for it myself. And she was like, mortgage the house. And I was like, what? What, really? And she was like, yeah, I gotta see this. And I was like, you're kidding. And I was like, breathless and shit. Honestly, I don't think she was like, this must be made. I just think she was relieved to see me talking about movies again. Like, my wife hated as much as she was never a fan of what I did, the fact that I was like, I'm done with movies, and I went to podcasting, she was just like, it was much more fun around here when we made movies. So I brought her into the podcasting, made her a co-host and shit like that on one of the shows. But there's something sexy about fucking movies that some people go for and stuff. She was definitely one of them. She loves the circus life. A bunch of strangers get together, have camp for a while, and then fucking take off and shit. So she was like, yeah, finance it if you have to. But on the podcast, I talked about going to Blumhouse, and I was just like, Jason Blum, they made The Purge. Fucking, this is as stupid as The Purge. Why wouldn't they make this? And so I played the podcast for him, gave him the script. He was like, oh my God. He's going, this is so absurd. He's going, I'm in. So for a month, it was a Blumhouse picture. We were going to do it with Jason. But then they have a deal, an output deal with Universal. That's how they distribute their shit. So they gave the script to Universal to be like, this is one of our slotted pictures, just in case. And Universal was like, you're out of your fucking mind. No, never. And so he was like, okay. He's going, that's cool. I put movies out through other channels other than Universal. We can still find a way to put this out. He's going, but I think we might need a movie star. And he put a name out of somebody who's very fucking famous and shit. Nobody I've ever worked with before, but somebody who's hot and fucking young. Somebody from that very list that Justin was talking about. And so I said, well, I mean, yeah, that person's good, but I mean, I've seen that person in like fucking 16 movies recently, and I don't know, maybe we shouldn't be hiring the hot person. Let's hire the right person. Like, Justin Long will crush this. Like, he was born to wear a mustache in a movie. And so at that point, we began to agree to disagree. Because he was like, look, my financiers, the people that put money into his company, feel like they feel $3 million is a lot for a movie about a guy who turns a guy into a walrus unless they got a movie star in it. And we didn't have no movie star. There was no whiff of Johnny at this point, nothing. It was just Michael Parks and Justin Long is what I wanted. And so we agreed to kind of disagree. I was gunning for Sundance. The Sundance had just passed, 'cause I really wanted to be there with a movie on the 20th anniversary of Clerks having been there. Instead, I went up, we had a Clerks screening. But I wanted to bring a new movie there. I wanted to bring Tusk. So I was on Chautauqua, man. I said to Blum, I was like, dude, I appreciate you liking this movie. I can't wait until January when that dude is free. Like, I gotta go now. Like, that's the whole point of this fucking experiment, is like, just go. It's pushing whimsy. If it becomes the slog of like, we gotta wait for an act, the same shit back in the day, like the unfun part of the movie business, you know, where the thing that is least like a podcast, where, you know, you can't just be like, let's tell a story, and you sit down and start recording. You know, unfortunately, it's cinema, and so you wind up saying shit like, I need to express myself, give me $20 million in Ben Affleck. So shit like that slows the process down, takes all the immediacy of the art form out of it. That's what I love about podcasting, how fucking quick and easy it is. Doesn't require talent, that's great, I'm not talented and shit. And you can sit down with people who also don't have talent and make a show out of something, make something out of fucking nothing. So at that point, man, I said goodbye to Blumhouse and stuff, and it was, you know, weird because that seemed like it couldn't have gone easier. And I was like, these cats hit it out the park every time. Fucking, we're safe as kittens. And suddenly we were no longer safe as kittens. But it didn't matter, man. We found Demarest like 3 days later. Demarest came in. I was getting ready to finance it. Like, my wife had said, put up the house. I was like, all right, let's start doing the banking, figure out how to pull together fucking $2.7 million. Demarest came in by way of rep by WME, this guy Alexis Garcia, and he had sent the script out to a bunch of people. This Demarest cat, Sam Engelbart, David Greathouse, they come over to my house. We chit chat, hey, fucking LA, business, weather, blah, 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 and then, you know, fucking the script comes out and shit. And the dude was like, are you fucking serious with this? And I was like, yeah, I think so. So much so that I'm going to pay for it if you guys don't. Are you guys interested? And he's like, yeah, I think so. He's going, you really think you can pull this off? What do you think it's going to look like? I said, I think it'll be fucking weird. That's the best I can promise you. Won't be good. I'll tell you that much because I've never made a good movie. I said, but it will be interesting. I said, you know, I'll try not to make it bad. It's the best I can promise you. So he was like, boom, I'm in. So those cats wound up taken over to funding, so I didn't have to worry about anything. It happened so fast and easily. Now, some people are like, well, of course it happened fast for you. You got it made Clerks. But it was a very important part of the story for me that everyone fucking know, following along at home, that it wasn't easy. In fact, it was much harder for me to do this because of Clerks. You know, that's a high fucking bar, and I had 20 years to kind of make another one and never did. So motherfuckers are like, we've done enough chances on you. Plus, a few years ago, I stood on stage at Sundance and was like, so long, thanks for all the fish, motherfuckers, and took off and was done making movies and was very vocal about it, about how the marketing didn't make sense anymore, how Clerks 2 cost $5 million to make and $10 million to market, and that didn't make sense. As a low-budget filmmaker, there's no place for us anymore because all the commercial space is on the same scale. They don't make you pay less because you're an indie filmmaker and you got heart. They charge the same shit they charge fucking like Avatar 2 or whatever the fuck. So at that point I was like, what's the point? I can't practice my art anymore. I'd priced myself out of making interesting films. My salary kept going up and stuff. But the movies I made, the box office didn't go up, because I'm not a mainstream filmmaker by any stretch of the imagination. So I was getting overpaid to make pretend. In a field where everyone's overpaid, I was really overpaid to make fucking pretend, because I wasn't generating enough on the back end for it to be worthwhile. You know, I mean, we weren't losing money. I had this very great track record of like, my movies make their money back and shit like that. And that's not sexy. In the movie business, people don't want to hear liquidity. They want to hear like, fucking, it made a shit ton of money. So I was at a place where it was not going to be easy for me to make the movie at all, and I was kind of glad, because a bunch of cats that heard that podcast that the movie came from, a few of them reacted in this way that really fucking grabbed me, touched my heart, and like made me want to do it for this reason alone. You do anything for fucking 20 years, man, if you're lucky enough, you start looking for different ways to do the job just to fucking change it up for you. My old man worked at the post office, canceling stamps. There's only one way to fucking do that. The most soul-crushing way possible. Press a button over and over again. He didn't have the luxury of being able to make the job new for himself. For me, I could kind of like give it a facelift or something like that, try something else. And there was this thing online, this reaction to the podcast, that really fucking made me lean forward. There were a bunch of people that were like, is that it? Is that allowed? That's okay? That's how you make a movie? That's how you get started? Like, a lot of cats, man, they hear about the process when you've got a script and some actors and you're heading toward a set. Generally, nobody's there for the origin point, for ground zero, for the moment you get an idea. And the beauty of that podcast was you heard it. You were there for ground zero when we were like, hey, Walrus movie. And you heard us go back and forth, and it was not alchemy. It wasn't fucking mystical science. It wasn't two wizards concocting a spell that only talented people could do. Bullshit. It was two guys going like, oh, it could be like Iron Man. In the end, there'll be a bigger suit. Yeah, that'd be fucked up. And then this would be fucked up. All we do is talk about a bunch of other movies. Oh, it'll be fucked up like the Human Centipede, except it's Human Walrus. We talk about a bunch of movies, and at the end I was like, and then it's Tusk. And so those people who heard the podcast, well, you know, they don't make, not everyone's a self-starter. Not everyone knows how to get begun. You know, some people, the journey of a million miles, blah, 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 and other cliches, but they don't fucking tell you that first step is nigh impossible. Like, last step is the easiest fucking step in the world. First step, though, is treacherous, and it's fraught with fucking all sorts of, like, if you don't know, if there's no fucking roadmap, and there never is, you don't know what to do. It'd be like giving a fucking key to a car to somebody who's never been in a car before and be like, make it go. And they're like, I have the will to get from point A to point B, but I have no fucking clue how this automobile begins. And it's just as simple as showing them, oh, you stick a key here and turn it. So they listened to that podcast, and they heard us stick a key in and turn it. And it demystified the process for them. They weren't sitting there going like, oh my God, like fucking, how did this, that's that simple? I do this with my friends all the time. I sit around and fucking talk about all the parts of the movie that I like, and I like building my own movie in my head. Why can't we take it forward? So by them hearing it and grooving on it, that made me want to take them the rest of the way. They've all my audience, I love them to death. Without them, I'd have to work at that fucking convenience store again. So like, I give them everything I can. All the podcasts are free. We don't do the subscription model at all and shit. I feel guilty when you charge them for movies and shit, because, you know, you try to give away art for free. That's what I've been doing with the podcast. But if you love something and you want it to grow along with you, I've been sitting out there for like 3-4 years telling them all to make their own podcast, because it's easy, free, and nobody's stopping them right now. So, you know, for this, it was like, shit, I can, a bunch of them are only here in the first place because they like the fact that I used to make movies or whatnot. I can actually show them how that's fucking done. They heard the beginning. They never hear the beginning. Now I can take them hold their hands to the whole thing, open source the movie, so they can see what it is. Because then maybe one day they fucking start their miracle and shit. And the fact that they heard that it was simple, that it wasn't like fucking, boy, it takes David Fincher to do this. No, it's just two stoners going like, it'll be like fucking that third act in Iron Man. It'll be like you love a Jeff Bridges ending. And you watch that movie, and I guarantee you'll never once think of Iron Man. You won't sit there and be like, oh, this is just like an Iron Man. But it was part of the process. And for people to hear that, and to hear and understand that, like, it doesn't matter, there's no rules. One motherfucker said that. He's just like, aren't there rules when it comes to this? Like, fuck, no, it's art. What do you think Quentin does? Quentin consumes a bunch of genre he likes, and then he's like, I'm going to do my version of that. And that comes from consumption. All art comes from consumption. You see something that you like, that touches you, and then you're like, I want to replicate that in some way with my version of it. They made their statement, I want to make mine. So that became like the passionate part of the process for me. I was like, they can all hear and see how easy and possible this is. Yes, the money is the difficult part, but money's like anything in life, man. You put enough talented people together, smart people, willing people together, they'll find it. And also, you don't need a lot of money to tell stories these days and shit. We needed a little because we had a guy in a rubber suit. But other than that, man, it was easy for people to follow. So those few cats who were like, I don't even know how to get started in this fucking thing, now have a little roadmap that they can be like, okay, we can sit around and talk about a bunch of movies we like, and if it shapes into our own movie, fucking cool, maybe we can take it the next step. So that's what fueled me, man. Getting Park's attention and the notion, I'm like, they'll all hear it. They heard the beginning, they'll be with us every step of the way, right to the end. If I could do that, if I could take it to a movie from a dopey fucking concept, barely a concept, to a conceit, to a finished film that they go see in a movie theater, that's going to launch 1,000 ships. That's going to be more powerful than Clerks. Like, what I always loved, the byproduct of Clerks was there were a bunch of people who were like, that counts? This is a movie? I'm making a movie. And I haven't gotten to do that for 20 years, and I got to do it again with Tusk. Because there are a lot of people out there who've just fucking cracked the code based on seeing this. That, like, not seeing the movie itself. It's not like the movie's fucking brilliant. It's the process. And they were there for, what, the spark of an idea, now they're actually watching it in the movie theater. Bunch of people out there are going to be like, fuck it, it's time. And they're going to do it themselves, man. Because you can't look at something like Tusk and then bitch about, like, I can't get my shit done. Yes, you can.
One very short question.
I wanted to ask you.
I have one very long answer.
About-
Yeah, one very long
Now,
answer.
your cinematography, James Laxton did a great job, and
Mm.
especially with Howard Howe's house. The
Yes.
production design, your umbers, your red mahoganies,
That
stunning.
house, we got
What
lucky.
were your considerations in designing that?
Oh, my considerations are very simple. I don't really work in the loft. I work in the basement. And my first consideration was, how do we get as base camp to one place where we never have to move in the movie? Because when you're moving base camp, you're losing time that you could be putting up on camera and film. And when you're, shooting a low budget movie, every second counts and shit. So, we went to North Carolina and we found this abandoned golf club, or golf range, what do they call it? Country club. Abandoned. It had been up and operational in this town, a hill, Kramer Mountain it's called. A bunch of what looked like Insta-mansions, big houses built over the last few years. That at the top had this gigantic mansion built in like the turn of the century that was owned by this man Kramer, who had a textile mill, and he built this like man-made lake right next to the house. You would pull a lever if the textile mill was on fire, and all the water would flow down to his textile mill, put the water out. It was amazing. It's an engineering feat that they still bring kids to see. So we found that house in the middle of this abandoned country club, and I was like, okay, that's the exterior of Howe's house. We looked through the house, see what we could shoot there. It didn't have our interior for the study or anything. We used 2 smaller rooms in the house, but generally the study or Howe's mansion or whatever is the welcoming center of the golf, the country club. So we went in there, and it's just had this big fireplace and fucking that dopey chandeliers, a bunch of elks. Looks like tusks too. And I was just like, let's shoot here, man. I was like, we make it dark enough in here, they'll never know it was a fucking lobby. And so it was all about that. It wasn't like, how do we make something good? Luckily, I got a guy on my team named Kretschmer, John Kretschmer, who was perhaps the greatest production designer I've ever worked with. He'd just come off of like a whole run on Homeland. So he was one of the first people bought into the project with the Walrus Yes notion. Like, he's like, they sent him the script, and they were like, they're trying to make this for like $2.7 million over the course of 15 days. And he got involved. He came to meet me, and he goes, I've made movies for 10 days, and I've made movies over the course of 20 days, but I've never in my life made a 15-day movie. What is that like? So he wanted to get involved, just see if he could pull it off, see if he could pull off the Walrus, and he was so committed. Like, this dude's been working movies for decades and stuff, and the Walrus Enclave captured his imagination. He was just like, I was born to make this. So he took the space that we gave him and created. I mean, luckily he's a man who comes from the world of television, so they're used to working fast and great. It used to be fast and good, but now they're making better TV than they're making fucking movies. The production value looks insane. So these cats, the North Carolina crew, we cherry-picked from Homeland and Banshee. They both shoot there. You have these cats that were going incredibly fast, but giving you grade A quality work, man. And Kretschmer was absolutely one of them. Laxton, it's so funny, I still talk to him about it. The only reason I picked Laxton was because my DP, Dave Klein, who I worked with, was shooting Homeland. He got a job on Homeland and stuff. So They gave me a list of DPs, and I clicked on one of the links, and Laxton had shot a video underwater, and I was like, we got an underwater sequence, hire that fucking guy. And so we joke about it to this day, that it was like there's one shot in the movie where he goes underwater, and that's why I hired James, but James was the genius that was like, we have such an instant kinship and whatnot, but he was the guy that was like, make it widescreen. And I was like, no, this is like a Hammer movie, man. It was like 185 at best, 233. The grandeur of a widescreen. He goes, yeah, he's going to think it look cool. So I was like, all right. And so it was meant to be punk rock handheld movie, because James was like, push it out here. We went to rails on the whole thing, and we had Philip, who was this amazing dolly grip man in North Carolina, who was so fucking good at the job. You have to be good at that job for me to remember your name. He's so fucking good at that job, man, that we eliminated Steadicam. We'd had a few days of Steadicam. We're like, no need. This guy's human Steadicam with these rails. So once you get that wide frame, all of a sudden it's like we're doing this constantly. We're constantly floating back and forth. And the movie looks classy. I was telling James every step of the way, I was like, dude, nobody's going to believe I had anything to do with this. This movie looks far too good. But we have a really good relationship. We communicate well with one another. He is excellent at things that I'm not. He's one of the most zen, calm pools of a human being you've ever been around. And we just worked together again on Yoga Hosers, and he somehow found a way to make that movie. Like at one point in that movie, we stop and make Schindler's List for about 10 minutes with black and white. It's crazy, but he is so gifted, man. I told him, and Elisa Fredericks is my AD, my first AD. I met her on TUSK as well, and she just wrapped the Yoga Hosers with us. I was like, look, man, I'd write down some stupid shit, and I stand there and I'd see if they could pull off the stupid shit, but you guys bring it to life. You guys figure out how to frame it, how to put it in a fucking frame, capture these dopey ideas, and schedule it. Like, that's something you appreciate with old age, is how somebody puts together all this work and makes it fit in the time you're doing it. And Elisa plays Tetris with the schedule. It's like one of the things I'm really turned on by. I'm like, look at how well you schedule this day. We're all out on time. Like, no overtime's amazing. So those are the real heroes to me, man. The true hero on TUSK, more than anybody else, got to be Chris Parkinson. There's a dude over in England. He's here now. He's right in Los Angeles today. But there's a dude in Brighton in England who one morning woke up and was just like, I'm going to write a hoax about the walrus. And he sat down and he wrote this ad on Gumtree.uk, this fake ad about an old man looking for a lodger who all he asks is that you dress up like a walrus, because he once had a friend that was a walrus. And that's what we talk about in the podcast. That's what really captured our imagination. We're like, oh my God, I'd see that fucking movie. That's fucked up and stuff. It was a hoax. He just made it up. It was all a joke. But that dude gets up one morning in Brighton, England, and is just like, I'm bored. I'm going to write a hoax ad on Gumtree.uk. And across the world, I'm sitting there going like, holy fuck, dude, that sounds like a movie. That's born of the internet. The whole fucking movie don't exist. Like, my wife at one point was like, you shouldn't have retired. And I said, why do you say that? And she goes, because look what you're doing now. And I was like, this never would have fucking happened if I hadn't did what I did, man. This thing is a product of its time and era. It's born of social media and the internet. It is of the era of podcasts. It was born of podcasts. It's about podcaster. Twitter greenlit it. I said, hashtag Walrus yes, and they pushed me into fucking writing it. The ad only exists on Gumtree.uk on a website because of the internet. And fucking I only see it because it got memed out to me at one point, and we talked about it on our podcast. So the whole thing is very much of its time. While still feeling like this is not a pat on the back, but I look at how Laxton shot it, and it looks timeless. Like, once you get an old man in a mansion opposite a young man, you got something like it, even if you're not trying to be Lovecraftian, it sets an image in people's heads where they're like, oh, I'm familiar with this trope. Like, they know it. It's something familiar about it. So we start with familiar, and then we just fucking like throw stupid-ass, goofy shit at them and try to call it a movie. And thanks to the actors, man, they bring such fucking earnestness to those roles and shit that, like, every once in a while you're like, oh my God, this is a movie. And then they're like, nope, it's a stoner conversation on a podcast. But fuck, it looks weird.
Before you go, can you say a word about Johnny Depp, how it was working with him and designing his character?
Amazing. Well, we designed his character by accident on a podcast episode of Smodcast earlier. I think it was called Gila Point and the Maple Syrup Gang or something like that. So me and Scott Mosier, the guy I do Smodcast with, it basically was just a reason to do goofy French accent and stuff. And we were making each other laugh. So I needed a cop character in TUSK, and I was like, oh, fuck, you know what'll make Scott Mosier laugh? If it's Gila Point. So, I've gotten to the point in my career where I'm not really interested in amusing the audience, just one person. I'm like, if Scott laughs at this, I win. And he read the script and he was like, fucking Gila Point. And I was like, right. And that's what the movie's full of, just a bunch of shit that like we like, or a bunch of shit that I like that is like, that makes me laugh. So when I was done writing it, I looked at the role and I was just like, God, it's fucking funny. I said, all right, in a movie that's born in a blaze and it's nothing but pushing whimsy, like if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have given a shit. Every step of the way, I was like, let's see if this works. But in that movie, man, like fucking what is the best possible casting of that role? Fuck like cost, fuck fucking social strata in this business, fuck everything. If you had an open book, you cast anybody you want, who would it be? And I was like, it'd be Dap. Dap would fucking crush the fake Quebec accent, it'd be amazing and shit. And I knew him for years through the kids. But like we never talked about work. We talked about work, about working for this person or working with this person, but never like we should work together. Not at all. We kept it real. He's in one world. I'm way down below. But lovely human being and shit, and loves the craft. It's just a musician at heart. But fuck, he's the just generation's greatest actor. So I when I looked at it, I said it's him, and I texted him, because I had his number for years because of the kids, but I never fucking blew him up. One time the kids went out, I was like, here's my number. I was like, right on. Years I never touched that number, and then this one day I was like, just do it. What do you give a shit? Worst it's going to say is no. And he's such a classy dude. He'll just politely decline. He'll be like, oh my God, I would love to, but like I'm fucking 10 movies and shit. And you'd be like, right, no problem. So it won't even be that dreadfully embarrassing. And you'll still be able to see him socially and it won't be horrible. But it's like asking somebody on a date, and I haven't done that in fucking years. I've been married for a long time. So it's figuring out, and I just texted him finally, and I was like, hey man, I know this is going to suck because fucking, I'm sure you hate this, but I got a movie you'd be perfect for. And he's just like, what are you talking about? And I said, let me tell you the story, because everything's a fucking story, as you can see. So I said, there's this movie, Red State, Michael Parks, this amazing actor, didn't get his due. I want to shape a movie around this guy so we shine a light on him. He's 73, motherfucker should be working more. He's an acting Yoda, and fucking, this movie is all about him. I took all the sex, politics, and Red State, religion out of Red State, and just left the crazy Michael Parks performance and stuff. And he texted back, I love Michael Parks. So I sent him a link to this blog I had written about the whole thing, where I was like, hey man, walrus, yes, blah, blah, blah. And he read it and he goes, this sounds like something I would love to swim around in. Thank you for thinking of me. Like he was so sweet. He's such a good actor, he makes you believe that like you did him a solid. Like he's going, thanks for thinking of me. I'm like, come on, dude, we all think about you. But really, it's like you gotta know which way the favor goes. And I was like, dude, I think we know that you're doing me more of a favor than otherwise. But it was wonderful. I didn't direct him. I just pointed a camera on him. I don't really direct at all. I mean, most critics will tell you that. But I'll tell you honestly, like I just hang a camera on an actor, shoot that fucking performance, bring it back behind the monitor and be like, look at this. This is fucking awesome. This is in the movie. That's in the movie. I can't believe you did this. This is in the movie. This I'd like a better version of. Do one more of these and maybe it'll be in the movie and then this is good. And then they go and do it. Like, I don't subscribe to, I appreciate the art form, but I don't make movies where it's just like, inside you're a gazelle and you're surrounded by lions, but you want them to think you're a lion. Like I don't do that kind of directing. I'm more like, this is what you did, and this is what you can do next, and this is awesome, and I'll show you everything I got. And I always get to a point where I'm like, I have everything I need. Go fucking nuts, do whatever you want, because gold will come out of that shit. So in the process of doing that on Tusk, I didn't go over to Johnny and be like, be better. Like, he was brilliant. Like, it was fucking crazy nuts how brilliant it was. It was almost like he was in the room with me and Mosier when we did the podcast originally, because he was right in the fucking spirit. And I know he didn't listen to the podcast and shit. I was so delighted he said podcast in the movie, because I was like, that legitimizes it. But he didn't listen to the podcast. He just kind of took the material and fucking went crazy. So there we were on set. It's a man I've known for like 10 years at this point. And I've known him longer than that as a fucking icon. I remember watching the first episode of fucking 21 Jump Street on Fox when Fox finally became a real network. And so he's been working. Anybody who's an upperclassman, anyone who's been doing this job longer than me, like you're always like, wow, man, you were fucking famous back before I did this job and shit. So on that level alone, it was like, this is fucking weird. I can't believe it was the Walrus movie. Anything. But wow, this is weird. But what was even better was just being like able to sit back and not do anything, because he fucking did it all so great. Like really, I ain't just blowing smoke. Like I knew that was the guy, and he fucking knocked it out the park. When I first talked to him about it, he's like, I've always wanted to do Montreal accent. He's like, I shot in Montreal once, so I really think I can do it. And he goes, but I have an internal dimmer. said, what does that mean? He goes, I can go as high or as low as you want. He's like, I can dial it into accuracy, or I can make it cinematically funny. I was like, funny, funny, funny. So he gave us his Gila point, man, and it was awesome. But not only was it awesome in the movie, and we tried to keep it secret, like, you know, that's why it's like Gila point. But Yoga Hosers kind of spoiled our secret. By the time we got working on Yoga Hosers, like, we announced it with him in it, and people were like, it's a returning character from TUSK, and people were like, what? He's in TUSK? And suddenly the cat was out of the bag. But it was fun, man. It's fun to watch him just fucking dive in. He covered himself in rubber, just like Justin was covered in rubber, but he put a rubber nose on his face, dove in and just chewed the scenery, and it was awesome. And he's such a good, he's excellent composition. This dude directed before, and he should direct more and more. We did a shot where he was just like, where are their shoulders? And I was like, we're just dirty right here. He's like, all right, so if I lean in, I'm going to come closer, and come to about here. And I was like, yeah, go ahead. And behind the monitor, and we're shooting that. I'm like, oh my God, he gave me a scene-ending, gorgeous fucking close-up. Like, this guy's composing within the movie. I was like, he's brilliant. So it was great. Every part of it was great. But honestly, more special than that was like, it's wonderful that he's in the movie, but it birthed Yoga Hosers. He was there, and he literally said, we worked with our kids for like 2 hours on TUSK. There were 2 girls behind the counter at the convenience store. And, you know, it was a blast. Like, fucking, Lily Rose had never done anything before. There's Johnny, like, fucking telling her how to do things. I'm telling Harley how to do things and shit. And then we shoot the scene, and after the end of the scene, he's going, oh my God, that was so fun. He's going, we should put them to work and retire. And I was like, well, one of us has an island. Others of us have to go to work. But it lingered with me. He was like, wasn't it fun? It was so fun to do. We should do it again. So I was like, fucking, that moment was probably the happiest I've ever been on a movie set. And I don't mean that in a first world kind of, it's tough being on movie sets. I love being on movie sets. But of all the fucking joy in 20 years, the moment where I'm standing across from my kid, who's going to be in the movie, playing a convenience store clerk, which is right next to my fucking heart, and there's this generation's greatest fucking actor in my movie wearing a fucking dick nose on his face, talking in a French accent. I was like, I've done it. Like, this is it. I dropped the mic. This is amazing. So from that moment, I was like, imagine if you had a whole movie like that, and that's what Yoga Hosers was. So it's given us a chance to like make this weird family movie with our kids, and it's like a PG-13 and shit like that. So that's the true gift of that performance, man. And it was all because of Parks. It was all because he was like, oh my God, the chance to work with Parks. That's why there's a scene in the movie, only scene that the two of them share. You got 2 dudes doing completely different voices, actors being actors in an actor scene, acting at each other like dueling fucking wizards, chewing the scenery all around them and stuff. And the scene's probably the longest scene in the movie, and the editor in me is like, bring it down, bring it down. But I honored that performance because that's why Johnny did the movie. He was like, the chance to act with Michael Parks? Absolutely. And when they did get together, it was fucking 2 forces of nature. 2 actors that make brilliant choices you never see any other actors make, taking shit dialogue, dopey dialogue, and making it fucking sing, making it work. Like, you're like, oh my God, what are they going to do next? And it was awesome. It was fun to watch. And I got lucky because of Parks. People love Michael Parks. That's what got us to John.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you, folks.
Kevin.